real privilege to have Sokari Douglas Camp, CBE, with us this evening, and we're all really excited about her talking about her work. I'm sure lots of people want to hear actually about her work from the artist herself. A little bit about Sokari. She was born in Nigeria and came to live in the UK as a child, I believe, and then studied fine art at Central School of Art and then at the sculpture at the Royal College of Art. She's had a glittering career with more than 40, that's 40, solo shows worldwide in venues such as the National Museum of African Art, the Smithsonian Institute, and the Museum of Mankind, which was at the back of where the RA is now and is part of the British Museum. She's currently represented by the October Gallery in London. She's done many public artworks, and I'm just going to mention a couple. They include one called The Battle Bus, which is a living memorial for Ken Saro-Wiwa, and All the World is Now Richer, which is a massive sculpture and is about how enslaved people have made really important contributions to the world and to contemporary life. And that's been, I think it's been shown at the houses in the House of Commons and is planned to be sited in southeast London in Burgess Park. Sokari was also shortlisted for the 4th Plinth, and it's been great to have your work here in Elysium for audiences in Swansea to see, and they've absolutely loved your Colossal Women Ashobi and Londoneer. So now I'm going to hand over to you, Sokari, to tell us more about your work.
Gosh. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah and I went to the Royal College together. So that's how we met.
About 40 years ago.
Yeah, so many years ago. So fun. I never know how to start with these talks because I get very nervous about talking about myself. Anyway, let's give it a shot. I wanted to talk about Aishobi, which is a Yoruba word, and I probably won't do it any justice at all, but people dress in similar clothes, and somehow this empowers women. But to get the fabrics that you need costs money, and you probably have to give less food to your family to try and buy the cloth needed. But Nigerian women will do this to kind of empower themselves with their friends. And oddly enough, the same sort of thing is happening in London in the 21st century and in Nigeria at weddings. And, you can see people on YouTube and everything dressed in Aishobi. I got commissioned to make a sculpture with Ground Force, the gardening people, in 2004, and the British Museum wanted something outside, so Ground Force was invited to make an African garden, and it was suggested that I make something for the African garden, and I decided that because I wear some of these clothes myself, and in southeast London, I think at the time there were a lot of new churches with traffic jams on Sundays, with women pouring out of cars with fantastic head ties and corals and things. I wanted to celebrate Nigerians being so visible. So I decided to make Aishobi, and my girlfriends here dressed in the same clothes. And what's rather interesting is how people add their own character to a uniform. So here we are. This was the group that I managed to get together to show what Ashobi meant in front of the British Museum. So a lot of the girls are actually rather younger, my daughters and their friends, and the two older ladies all came out in this kit, and I thought they looked rather fine. So it was to kind of introduce people to the idea of Ashobi. So I work mainly in steel. When I was at the Royal College, I think I was working with sawdust. My work is intuitive. It's informed by my country of birth and the country that I live in at the moment. So here is Ashobi in its raw state. And I used a plasma cutter to just freely draw on the metal and make the lacy patterns that you saw on the clothing that I've shown you so far, traditional clothing. This is Ashobi in its raw state. I always like steel without paint and things on, because the oil, when you weld, makes all sorts of colours that don't stay forever, but while you're making it, it's nice. I like the tone of it. Anyway, I always do stuff to my steel. So here is Ashobi outside the British Museum, and I wanted it to be steamy. I wanted it to be sweating, as you might in Nigeria, and the banana trees sort of added to the scene that was being created outside the British Museum. Something tropical and warm, and these girls kind of dripped. They had Alice bands on the steel that dripped. The work was galvanized and powder coated, and then I sprayed the part of the piece pink, just because we love sort of slightly clashy colours, and you see these colours in nature anyway. I mean, things are vibrant and clashing at the moment with spring coming up. So my women were just like that, and they stand as the girls were in the previous picture. They were put onto stones in a kind of water trough so that they were a fountain originally. And I liked them that way, but since then they've only once been allowed to sweat in the way that I like them to. They've always been dry, like they are at Elysium at the moment, but they originally were made to be a water feature. This was the garden. It was really quite beautiful, but it was only for the summer, and then my women have been travelling ever since. They've been shown in lots of different places and spaces. Person in the middle is myself, dressed in traditional clothing. I think it's important to, show myself that way, just because, a lot of the fabrics that are called African fabrics I wear, and they do inform me when it comes to making work. And this type of clothing is incredibly comfortable, actually, but very, very useless for jumping on a bus or going on the tube, and even getting into a car, because this head tie malarkey gets in the way. And I've gone backwards. So yes, I changed topic very, very quickly and not gone as smoothly as I wanted to, but here are three graces. And I have lots of different styles of work that I have done. I'm interested in movement, theatre, costume, culture. the environment. And on this occasion, these women were in the V&A, in the Herzog Gallery, I think they call it. And these women are titillating, and they're made by Canova, and they're beautifully made. And in the galleries at the V&A, they are at a height where you look at their bottoms and fannies, basically. And V&A amazes me, just because it's full of rapes and terrible things, made in the most beautiful fashion. And a curator had my work in there over about a year ago for about 8 months. And she had my work in there. She described it as an intervention, which I thought was rather peculiar, but I was, amazed and happy that my work was in this peculiar environment with titillating sculpture and abstract wonders from people through the ages. Standing and being next to Rodin in these galleries was a great experience for me. So yeah, we move on, just because these three graces have been important forever, since Botticelli, and they have inspired all sorts of people. And the first time I really came across them was during COVID, I think. No, it was before COVID, but it was on the internet. And I was very, very surprised to see naked women, because I wasn't looking for porn. I had these three girls that were naked. And I discovered that the title was Europe Being Supported by Africa and America. And I thought, wow, Europe is still being supported by Africa and America. But this was done by William Blake, and he'd done this drawing to raise funds to help with the abolition of slavery. And it was documented that he was actually trying to show that these three women were equal. And I thought, no way are they equal. And it's strange to me that he shows bracelets, amulets on the American Indian women and the African, to show that they are slaves. And of course, the European in the middle is leaning on everybody and being held up by everybody. And the wreath that ties them all together is a tobacco plant. And I honestly didn't know what it was, but I thought it was some sort of wreath-like thing that, emperor or somebody would wear on their head. But no, it was tobacco to show trade and slavery and capitalism. And I thought it was an amazing image. And the way that William Blake has the women touching, makes your eye go round and round this drawing. And I actually think it's very, very beautiful. But I wanted the women to wear clothes, just because I haven't met that many naked women, really. And women in Nigeria love to wear clothes. So my sister-in-law sent me this photograph round about the time I found the William Blake drawing, and I just thought, wow, I'll put clothes on the women that I've just seen, because these three are like three graces to me, especially my sister-in-law in the middle, who's very fashionable and fashion conscious and would always have, you know, some designer glasses on her chest whenever she posed photographs, or even when she was just relaxing, that's what she did. Anyway, I thought they were gorgeous and I wanted to recreate them. So I made my own, Europe being supported by Africa and America. But, you know, I've twisted things a bit, and the fabrics that were in the last photograph suited what I imagine would represent Europe well. And the Mondrian-like patterning I thought was very suitable for the person in the middle. And then on the left, you have Igbo cloth, which is a particular tribe in Nigeria, and they have fabrics like that that represented Africa for me. And then I stretched things a bit and worked with the paisley pattern, but you know, I wanted it to represent the Middle East, actually, where paisley pattern came from in the first place. But you know, I just wanted it to represent different parts of the world rather than the Americas. I wanted Europe, Africa, Middle East. An echo on this thing now. I haven't touched anything, Sarah. Here is Europe being supported by Africa and America. And at the time, I wanted to talk about oil, just because my area of birth in Nigeria is where oil was discovered. And it's basically decimated the area. I come from 22 islands in the Niger Delta. My people are called Kalabari people. And oil is always on my mind, just because it's shipped everywhere. And in the last century, it was everything. And you know, people died because of the connections with oil, and it's affected my life basically. So these three graces, instead of just the tobacco wreath tying them together, I've got petrol nozzles at the ends of the wreath, just because that is the new campaign. It's not the abolition of slavery that I wanted to talk about. It's oil and the power of oil. So that was my intervention at the V&A. Closer look at the Igbo fabric and the petrol nozzle. It's just acrylic paint that I used on the steel, and it's gold leaf and copper leaf on the nozzle and different parts of the sculpture. And a lot of my work doesn't get galvanized, just because it costs to galvanize things, and I just work with black steel and paint what I need to, you know, that's how things are done. Next slide. I wanted to take you on another journey. This time it was around 2007. They celebrated Wilberforce's abolition bill, and it'd been 100 years or something in 2007. And some black artists, got the opportunity to come up with ideas for a permanent memorial somewhere in London. And I got very, very excited about this because we all like to work and have our work seen. So I got excited and did a lot of research and decided that I wanted to make something that was cheerful about the slave trade, which seems a bit perverse, but artists have a trait like that in them, I guess. So I made this thing which I called Steely Boat, and Steely is the calligraphy or language that is put on tombs and things in Egypt. It's a form of writing, yet it's, of course, reminiscent to the Brook ship that stored so many human beings. I just wanted to make them symbols on a symbolic boat. But the key for me was peeling these figures or these markings off and turning into full human beings coming away from the Brook ship, the symbol of the Brook ship. And my work is sometimes a little bigger than life size, but sometimes pieces just decide that they want to be small, and this was a piece that decided that it wanted to be small. Research is done constantly, and I think I found this photograph very recently, and I wanted to share it to you because it's just an amazing photograph. These were sugarcane workers. They must have been slaves, and they look fearsome, and they're women, and they look terrifying with their machetes. With my research for a memorial for the abolition of slavery, to the abolition of slavery, wanted to talk about as many characters as possible in the saga of slavery. So, I keep on researching just because we need to be informed. And I came across some text by an ex-slave called William Prescott, and he said, "They will remember that we were slaves, but not that we were brave." And I think that was in my head when I made that Steely Boat. I wanted something that conveyed a little more pride than suffering, even though, the suffering can't be denied. But there was just so many conversations that I started to add words to my work, and I made this little maquette with words behind the figures that said, "From our rich ancestral life, we will we bought, sold, and used," I think it is, sold and bought and used. But we were brave, we were strong, we survived. All the world is now richer. And the characters that sort of developed, I found in all sorts of places. This is my local church in Morworth, and these are Creole women. In Nigeria, we're not really taught about global history or our own history, but these Creole women educated me basically just because they were part of the slavery conversation, and they were repatriated to Sierra Leone, and of course slaves were also repatriated to Liberia, and they had a different identity to other sort of West African peoples just because their heritage was sort of westernized, and they were Christians, and they could read and write, and they were used as sort of the managers of West Africa in a sense, because accounting had to be done for the British Empire, and these people knew how. So these girls, I had conversations with them and discovered that some of them, their ancestors had been slaves. They had fought in the American War of Independence on the side of the British, and when America won, these slaves and people that had supported Britain were kind of rescued and taken to Nova Scotia, which was freezing, and they really couldn't live there. So Quakers and the British and all sorts of people got them back to West Africa. And to celebrate that fact, or to hold that identity, they wear gowns like this. And these gowns have carrots and potatoes printed on them. And the fact that they wear frock-like things called Alice gowns instead of the wrapper and buba that I showed you at the beginning of this talk, makes them very, very different peoples. So I added them to my troupe to show the saga of the slave trade. So you have a man in traditional clothing on the left, which is a wrapper. And, when David Beckham wore a wrap sarong thing, a big deal was made that a man could wear something like that. But quite a lot of the world does wear things like that. And the next man, who's probably one of the most tortured, he has a huge machete, which has been a little controversial with this piece. But as you can see, that was what was used to cut sugarcane and, make sugar that made Britain rich and unhealthy, but that was the tool that was needed to harvest that fruit. And then the next woman is a maid. The third figure is a maid, and probably another one of these very much tortured people. She came out with a sweet face, which is just extraordinary. So I work intuitively, and I work with sheets of steel, and I gas weld and MIG weld, and sometimes things come out well and sometimes they don't. But with this troupe, they came out as better than I expected. And the fourth woman is a Creole woman, and she wears an Alice gown and a boater, and she has a walking stick, which is very like a sort of Victorian portrait, a man with a walking stick, in the pipe in a photograph with a nice hat. She's got a kind of element of that about her. And then you have someone in a business suit, just because people of slave heritage do have businessmen in their lives. Michelle Obama's father, was probably some sort of executive. She certainly is, and I wanted to express that bit of heritage. And then we have my kids' generation in their 30s, who don't have to wear suits nowadays. They do business off their iPads or iPhones and wear jeans and a t-shirt. So the last figure is in jeans and t-shirt, but it tells the story of slave heritage. And the first kind of prototype was on Potter's Field, next to Tower Bridge in 2010. And yeah, it's the figures that were in the last shot in the House of Commons were made in such a way so that they could be made into bronze. And that is my current project, and has been a project for a very long time, just because these sculptures tour and have conversations in all sorts of places. I've also collaborated with other artists as well with this work. But we're hoping that these bronzes will be sited outside Burgess Park on a little corner, which is called Boyer Place. And this month we got planning permission, so I've got an awful lot of work to do to try and raise funds to make other 5 figures. I just wanted to show you other things that I've done. This is a memorial to Ken Saro-Wiwa. He was a writer and Africa, maybe the world's first environmental activist, actually, but let's say that he was Africa's first environmental activist. He was mainly a writer, but in 1995, he was tried and then killed by the Nigerian government. And Ken decided that he ought to be remembered. And a competition was set out, and myself and another chap won, and I got given the chance to make this peculiar structure for an environmentalist, because this is a battle bus. Now we have battle buses to, campaign, I want to say campaign against, for Brexit. We had battle buses, but, Trump, Obama, all these people have battle buses that have logos on them. So I used Ken's words, and the words that I chose for one of his last interviews was, "I accuse the oil companies of practicing genocide against the Ogoni," which is Ken's tribe, the Ogoni, banned a certain oil company from taking out oil from their area because these companies are so disrespectful when oil wells and things are not in the West. They pollute and waste so that the local people can't live where oil is discovered. It's the kind of thing that wouldn't be done in the North Sea. Yet I became aware of this because I was at the dentist, I think, and I picked up a magazine, and there was an article about the flaring in Nigeria polluting the ozone layer in Australia. And that made me realize that this is a global matter and wasn't just fixed on the Kalabari territory or the Ogoni territory. And so I was happy to try to make people more aware of what was happening in different parts of the world, in my country of birth. Anyway, this is a more recent piece. This is called Man-Made, and I got the chance to make this in Japan. It was meant to be an exhibition about journeys, and it was hit by COVID and didn't get a proper kind of airing. But it was meant to be a mixed exhibition with lots of artists from all over the place. and I got the chance to make this ridiculous kind of noddy car in a garage. So people were having their suspensions done in one bay, you know, a bumper straightened in another, and I was in the middle making this car. I think the Japanese have a strange sense of humor, but anyway, it was fun to make, and it was a sort of a thing that I put in a wagon in quite a busy station, just outside Tokyo. So, you know, trains were going past it. It was a successful piece. More recent piece is this one, which is basically a seat and foliage. It's a piece made so that you can sit on it and just take a moment. And it's called Peacetime, which I think you'll want in the world. So this was made in about 3.5 weeks, and I'm hoping it will rust and disintegrate and change colour and show itself in the most natural state that steel can be. But it's also in Japan. Another look at it. It's the leaves are maple leaf, and that's a real maple tree beside it, and it looks onto rather beautiful hills, but it's on a school playground. My most recent work is celebrating women still, and these are Suriname women dressed in traditional clothing, and I love the idea of people in traditional clothing, just because, you know, this is probably made in Indonesia, and shows all the colonial history that we collect as peoples in the world. And I like the hibiscus pattern and the colours and the style of the clothing. I discovered that these women traditionally, when they were slaves, would wear 3 or 4 skirts, just because I guess they didn't have hangers or places to put their clothing, so they just wear layers. And the women have kept up this style and just made their skirts as voluminous as possible. And I just like that elegance, and I love this picture. And I decided to make a piece very like it for a competition, which I'm making now in my studio, life size. So here they are. Wow. And this piece is called 3 Graces, the Dialogue, and it's a bit overwhelming just because it's heavy work to get it done on time. I make my own work. I've suddenly realised at my age now that that's quite foolish. I'm still enjoying making work, but it kind of takes it out of you, and you have to kind of rest after a good day in the studio. I'm just hoping that I can finish this on time and make things look as good as possible. And that's it.
Wow, that's amazing, Sokari. Has anybody got any questions or comments that they'd like to make?
I just found it. This is Lee here. Hiya.
Hello.
I found it fascinating talk. I'm terribly interested in the way you use fabric and you shape pattern in steel, and I love Nigerian fabrics. And you sort of touched on it a bit. Are there differences in fabrics to different groups of people in Nigeria, to the tribal differences? And I mean, so are they significant in pattern? The patterns have. Can we sort of read certain sorts of patterns as being linked to certain sorts of groups?
I think traditionally, I think traditionally you could, but that is actually a lie, Lee.
Right.
What people call African fabrics.
Yes.
Not African.
No.
The artist Yinka Shonibare talks about that all the time.
Yeah.
You know, these are things that are made in Indonesia that Africans happen to like very much.
Where are they made, Sokari?
Indonesia.
Indonesia.
Yeah.
So this is a fairly new thing, that the wearing of these patterned fabrics.
No, I mean,
No?
I think that trade in fabric has just been going on forever.
Yeah.
You know, I suppose the silk trade
Yes.
had an effect on East Africa, especially.
So the Africans didn't produce block printing themselves.
They do. I mean, we have weavers.
Yeah.
There's this wonderful woven cloth
Yeah.
that's quite thick, and you know, people wear it. The men wear it, especially as agbada, which is a huge kind of cloth-like thing with huge arm space that they roll up
Yeah.
and look terribly glamorous. And you know, we have adire, which is like indigo printed fabric that you could think is Japanese, but it isn't.
Wow.
You have indigo pits in northern Nigeria, and there's wonderful prints made. I've collected some of these the old prints and used it in my work. Just because there's a particular artist called Nika, and when she first started, she came from a family of adire kind of printers, and they would help kind of homeless or displaced women and teach them a trade so that they could look after themselves. And we as Africans also adopted fabric that I think comes from Bangladesh, I want to say, but my daughter will probably correct me. And it's tartan-like in pattern. And it so happens that in Jamaica, they also wear this plaid pattern as well. And my people actually think that it's our traditional material, but it's not. It's made in Bangladesh or somewhere. And then we also wear lacy tops and things. And in my childhood, these lacy tops were made in Manchester. Lacy was woven in Manchester, the best quality. And so when you think of an African's clothing, it actually comes from all sorts of different places.
Yes. Thank you.
All right.
I think Marie-Therese has got a question, but can I just interject? Do you think that those textiles were traded as a result of the slave trade, that they would trade with slaves and then get the fabrics from places like you know, the UK and stuff as a return thing?
I don't only think it was the slave trade. I think it was trade
generally.
Yeah.
I just wondered. Sorry, I butted in there, but Marie-Therese, did you have a question?
I did. Hi, Sokari.
Hello.
Hi. I'm sorry. I'm Jim Beak because, well, anyway, long story. I was wondering, because you said when you started, you were making sculptures out of sawdust and wood, and then I sort of wondered, how did you transition to working in metal in this way? And I'm sort of presuming that your sawdust sculptures were abstract and these are figurative. So what was it that, or not, have I assumed too much?
My sawdust sculptures weren't abstract.
Oh, right. Okay, I assumed too much, sorry.
But the glues and stuff that I used were terrible. I think they used to make everyone weep at the Royal College. It was so strong. And one chap, I think, almost tried to get me thrown out for polluting the air at the Royal College. But I used sawdust because I didn't want to use plaster. I found plaster too white, and I wanted to talk about brown people and brown skin, so I used sawdust. Sawdust gave me the idea that I was hardening stuff and putting stuff in a certain position, and then I got to hardening material. And then, of course, steel's hard already. So it was like almost a no-brainer. Because it would stay where I wanted it to, and resin wasn't needed. And, really thin steel and really thick, and make it do all sorts of amazing tensile things.
No, I really enjoyed looking at your work and thinking about it. And this talk has been very interesting because I love the idea of the textiles and the cloth and the fashion and just that whole celebration of people is great.
And the history. I've learned a lot. The connections with elements of the past.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think also, sorry if I can just interject, what I think is interesting as well is the variety that you've got within your the idea of the costume and the dress, and the fact that it's really linked to those people, that is very personal to you and your family, as it were, and people in Nigeria. And I don't know if I'm right, but it's interesting that it's very personal and it's very much about you making those things. And it's different to, I think I just want to bring in that idea of Yinka Shonibare and his use of textiles, which he kind of uses those imported Indonesian fabrics that are actually they get them from Holland, as a way of subverting Western power through pattern. And that kind of, I mean, I've seen this exhibition very recently that he's got on at the Serpentine, where he's made small versions of people like Winston Churchill and Queen Victoria, and they're covered in these bright fabrics, but he's kind of done it in a way to, I think, subvert their power. Whereas I don't know if I'm right here, but you, in a sense, tell stories through your use of costume and fabric about people and about in a very personal way. And I think that's got a much more sort of powerful commemorative kind of role, if you like. And I like that. It's much more sort of, I suppose, grassrootsy. And I think that, I really enjoyed that. I don't know if I'm right with that, but it's quite a contrast between you and Yinka Shonibare's work, really.
Yeah, I think it might come from actually wearing this stuff.
Yes, possibly, yeah. And maybe you're a woman. I don't know.
That's it. That's quite key.
Yeah, I think so. One thing I did want to ask you is, you talk about drawing into the steel as well, that you draw.
Yeah.
And that, now it's quite hard work. And also, there's, somebody that also works in steel, you've got all the fumes and everything. Do you think there'll ever be a time when you hand that over to a digital way of making your patterns and fabrics? Or do you like that connection with the cutting into the steel?
Good question.
Yeah, well, cutting into the steel it is so free.
Yeah.
And it looks very, very different from a CAD
Yeah.
piece. I mean,
It-
CAD just doesn't have the same.
No, it would be cleaner, wouldn't it? And
Yes.
the wobbly. I love that kind of the wobbly asymmetry of you
Yes.
drawing on the steel,
Yeah.
and that brings a kind of liveliness to the surface, and it's never quite the same. Whereas a digital pattern would be absolutely exact, wouldn't it?
The stamp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find Shonibari's use of fabric rather more literal. I like the way that you find form for fabric, for drapery, for pattern, so that there's something said within the stuff itself, that's kind of new about it. Whereas the kind of cladding of things with fabrics, I think, is rather more literal enterprise, more conceptual one.
Yes.
So I enjoy your finding of forms with the use of pattern.
Well, I mean, it's great to imagine that you could be in it.
Yes.
And I think it's the sort of drawing element in steel, because it's, the material is so strong.
Mm.
You can have it see-through.
Yeah, you need something to transform it. You need subject.
Yeah. And you can almost imagine being in the Londonere.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But
School Run has that characteristic as well, because the figures don't have faces and things, and Ashobi is far more assertive, just because they, even though they don't have features, they're solid bodies and things, but you can see through the clothing. I love the see-throughness of lacy fabrics that I've experienced wearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Was there a reason with Londonere that she isn't painted? Is it something, are you saying something to do with perhaps Londoners? You often see Londoners in not very bright colours. Is it meant to be a contrast to perhaps Ashobi, where they're full of colour?
I think Londonere is just enjoying the pattern making. It's a silhouette. It's the drawn kind of collage in space. The pattern in space.
Because it's moons and stars, isn't it? Is it moons and stars? Yeah.
And there is a fabric that is called just that. So I mean, maybe a West African woman around my age would recognize that cloth.
Wow.
But this business of Ankara, I mean, yeah, there's lots of patterns that have names.
Mm-hmm.
And people, choose the pattern to say something about a situation. I mean, Ghanaians have that in their traditional cloths.
And do you still have, like, you buy the fabric and get the things made from you choose the fabric and then you get the tailor would make the garments for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes, the designs that they like to make aren't, that wonderful. But, there's some amazing designers nowadays that, you have to pay quite a bit of money to get wonderful pieces made. But, African fashion is a new thing. Yeah. Very exciting. The things that people
Great. Are there any other comments or questions for Sokari?
Hello.
Oh,
Hello, can you hear me? I haven't got. I'm lost
Is that
somewhere in the tech. Yes, I'm lost somewhere in the technology. I can't,
Don't worry.
I've just got the last
can hear
slide
you.
up.
We can hear you.
You can hear me, right? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much for bringing your work down to Elysium, and it's been a super talk tonight. I'm a sort of mainly a textile artist, and also I've got family who live in South Africa, so I've seen quite a bit of South African or sub-Saharan art, shall I say, because they have a lot in Cape Town now. But what I loved about, Sarah mentioned that a lot of your figures seem very personal to you, but I find them that they embrace universal themes of womanhood. And I mean, when I first saw them, I thought, my goodness, are they queens? Are they just women meeting in the marketplace, having a gossip? You know, are they showing off their new clothes? You know, this sort of, we can, as women, I think we very easily identify with them. And I just, you know, thrilled to see that you are using, you know, their dress, the way it's done in a different form, because you're using not a soft fabric, you're using something that's hard and maybe shiny in places. And it's, the treatment is wonderful. I must congratulate you. I think it's a wonderful show. Thank you.
Sarah put that together.
No, I
no.
did.
Well, you did really. That's
Yeah.
all your work.
Right. No, but I mean, you know, I'm just, you know, that, I mean, to me, they were, your ladies were just,
Yeah.
stunning. Mm.
Thank you. Thank you. It's yeah, I wish I could see them in the space.
I mean, one more thing about like steel and fabric. The other thing is that I often think about the way that you work, Sokari, is, you know, because you're working with a flat material and you're cutting into it and then you're welding it together, it's not actually dissimilar from actually making clothes, is it? Because when we make clothes, we cut them out of a flat material and we stitch them together. The difference is, of course, is it's a hard material and you have to use like plasma cutters and welding to put the work together. But I often think it's like piecing pieces of fabric together.
Yes.
And you know, it's just a different material, and then it creates different forms. But it is really exciting to see. I think Jonathan will agree with me. What's been lovely about the show, not only the crossovers between all of your works, because there are crossovers, but seeing such big pieces of sculpture that we encounter, you know, in that space, and it's just been lovely to see that, to have a gallery, a big gallery full of sculpture. It's just been amazing, and people have responded to them as characters. You know, we had all these, it's 60 children in, and I will send you some pictures of some of the exquisite drawings they made of Ashobi, and they loved a Londoner as well. But it was a very diverse school, Roman Catholic school, and there was a boy who was from Africa, and he spotted it straight away. He spotted that, and he knew what Ashobi was, which was fantastic. And I could see the, you know, the joy in his face. He was really proud to kind of have, you know, a connection with that culture. So it's been amazing in that way.
Right.
Fantastic.
So I think maybe on that note, we should, it's gone 8 o'clock. And I don't think anybody else has got any questions. I don't think anything's come up in the chat box. I can't see anything. But I think it's just time to say thank you so much, Sokari. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, and showing us pictures of work developing and where you get your inspiration from. It's been a real pleasure to have you talking with us this evening.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.